Hi, my name is Haley Comet and welcome to my cosmic corner of the internet where we discuss all things astrology. And today, Mars Uranus North Node pileup and you. How this aspect is truly a hallmark defining feature of 2022 astrology and how it represents an area of our lives that we are refusing to conform, that we are breaking out of expectation and rebelling against societal structures as well as structures within our life that no longer feel resonant, that no longer feel aligned. With Mars in the mix, this is an activation point. This is an aggressive advocacy for what it is that we want and furthermore, what it is that we don't want. Uranus is the disruptor, it's the innovator, it's being able to break out of certain conventions or certain stereotypes that you're like, this is not me. And it really creates this real tunnel of energy, particularly in the Taurus portion of your chart, representing where it is that you are refusing to conform any longer, what it is that you are determined to infuse with some brand new energy and perhaps an explosive fight or two. Whenever we talk about Mars, we have to keep in mind this can be a conflict-ridden energy, but I'll be breaking down where we'll be feeling this energy collectively as well as where we'll be feeling it sign by sign. If you wouldn't mind, just keep in the back of your head if you gain any value from this video, I would so appreciate you hitting any of the buttons down there. So appreciated. I started a new community called Magic Monthly where I will provide my members a astrological calendar of events each month as well as journal prompts, what days are good for what, so you can sort of get a big picture planning of your month in sync with the cosmos. I thought this was important to do for August, as August is a pretty turbulent month, and moving into the rest of 2022, good to have some foresight on these astrological events and to be able to harness potent times of energy accordingly. So you can check that out within my members tab. And without further ado, let's dive in. Mars, Uranus, North Node, and you. So this energy technically exacts end of July, beginning of August. Now, it's not that these explosive conflicts that I'm talking about are limited to that time. Not at all. We've been feeling a slow burn since the beginning of the year. And whenever we talk about North Node, we have to keep in mind the eclipses. And it's interesting that this happens really smack dab in the middle of the eclipses during Leo season, right? It's kind of like halfway through the year check-in, calling back to what was happening within your world. The last round of eclipses, April, May, and sharpening in what will be a dominant theme come October and November. And you'll want to take a look to where in your chart you have 18 degrees Taurus, as that's where this major pileup happens. Now, it's been building, as I've highlighted. We could have gotten certain themes that arose during the eclipses, and Mars hit the eclipse point of earlier in this year last week. And then North Node conjoined Uranus July 26. So we've been feeling this energy build. Now, when we get Mars involved, that's the activation point because Mars is action, it is assertion. So that's when what's been simmering under the surface, the slow burn energy, could sort of reach a zenith. And we can definitely expect perhaps more protests, more sort of fighting, whether we feel that interpersonally or societally. We could definitely expect people fighting for the innovation that they believe in or fighting for where it is that they feel like they've had to conform. This definitely speaks with energy in Taurus, just what's been happening with inflation and the price of goods and things of that nature that can also play into this particular pileup and really be punctuated during eclipses. That's really what we've been dealing with this eclipse season. And I would just really highlight with so much energy here. And we have to keep in mind, Mars is action assertion, certainly, but it's in the energy of Taurus, which is, yes, consistent, but it's also very, very stubborn. I always think of Mars and Taurus as sort of like a toddler with a temper tantrum. And certainly many of the rebels at this time, because that's the energy of Uranus, this rebellion, will have a cause, but some may not. This can be a time that people can use this chaotic energy to just sort of kick up a lot of anger or aggression, not to say for no reason. There's some definite legitimate reasons to be protesting and to be advocating for what you think is right. But I want you to know that people can be more testy, they can be more agitated, they can be more frustrated, and that anger can be misdirected. So at a personal level, I just want to say, if you encounter people like end of July, beginning of August, and you're like, what is going on with people on the road? What's going on with people at the store? Why is everyone acting like this? It's sort of a time where anger that's sort of been bubbling and bubbling and bubbling might sort of explode. And you might not even be the reason why these people are angry. It's just a time where that sort of building slow burn of anger, that's another hallmark part of Mars and Taurus, is sort of reaching this zenith or this explosion point. Will that energy always be well directed? No. The energy of Uranus is combustible, is explosive, and some people could be having temper tantrums and misdirect their anger at you. I definitely think with this energy, it is a very aligned time to want to advocate for what it is that you believe in and putting, like, this is so corny, but truly it's being and embodying the change you want to see in the world and advocating Mars for the change, Uranus, that you want to see in the world. With North Node, it does create this really tense energy. When we talk about eclipses, when we talk about North Node, it carries this very faded quality. It's not the sign that necessarily that I would say, get out there, sell all your belongings and start traveling the world to tell everybody that you see about environmental protection. Certainly take the actions with Mars to create the change that you want to see, but do know it's a chaotic time. People are angry, it can be a lot of aggression, it can be a lot of frustration that's bubbling under the surface, and things can be chaotic, it can be erratic, it can be unpredictable. And I want you to know that your anger is fuel, okay? And when we lash out at each other, when we take out our frustration on people that we're driving next to on the road, or at the person who's doing customer service and we're yelling just because we're frustrated with how the day has came to be, like, that's sort of a destructive use of our anger. And we can use that in constructive ways, fighting for the world that we believe in, what it is that we value with the energy in Taurus. And it's important that we ground down into what is real and to patiently work for what it is that we want to see, rather than just, banging our head against the wall, putting in the practical efforts in order to build what it is that we value, as well as the future that we value. I just want to say that it can be a very chaotic time. It's an important time to protect your energy, be gentle with yourself, be gentle with others. People can be behaving in erratic ways. There can be a certain area of your life that you're no longer willing to conform, and that's beautiful, and we'll be taking it sign by sign about how you can lean into this constructively. But with Uranus, if this desire has come out of nowhere, like you've been really into trade school, it's going well, and then all of a sudden you're just like, I need to start my life over and do this. Uranus isn't the most stable influence. Pay attention to where you're inspired, where you want to innovate, where you want to disrupt convention. Like, this is what you wanted for me, it's not what I want. This energy can make us a little bit too impulsive. So it's really important to use what comes to the surface as data points, like observing, okay, I'm really calling in disruption in this area of my life. I really need to invite in the winds of change here. I need to be able to innovate this. I need to be able to show up more authentically in this area. Those are positive ways to lean into it. Try not to lash out at people. Try not to do something that are going to totally turn your life upside down. It's important, even though all this is conjoining in Taurus. Taurus is typically a very steady, stable sign, right? Not at the moment with all of this, but we need to be mindful around resisting an all or nothing, doom and gloom energy of South Node in Scorpio. Like, with South Node in Scorpio, like, with all of this energy opposing South Node in Scorpio, we can find this desire for change and for innovation and moving towards the future and disrupting what was and using our anger in constructive ways that builds a better future. We can find that we can slip towards the South Node Scorpio around descending into feelings of like hopelessness, or like it needs to be all or nothing, or being very, very destructive. That's why I keep emphasizing with North Node Taurus, ground down into what is real, ground down into what is in front of you, ground down in what you can see and touch and taste and smell. South Node Scorpio is doom scrolling. South Node Scorpio is fearing the worst, black and white thinking. spiraling into doom and into powerlessness. With North Node Taurus, it asks for patience, it asks for intentionality, so resist the temptation to do things impulsively or to do things destructively or to sort of sink down to your more base instincts. It asks, yes, your anger, where it is that you're so frustrated with society, where it is that you're so frustrated within your own life, where it is that you feel like other people are putting you into a box. Note that, use that, but rather than being super impulsive, aim to express it in a more bull-like way, 1 foot at a time. It's an interesting lineup with this happening in Taurus, because we both have to mitigate the Mars and Uranus energy, which is unpredictability around Taurus themes. Food, material goods, nature and the environment. Definitely could be an erratic time when it comes to storms, explosions, volcanoes, things of the nature. I never, with any of my videos, do I intend to garner any fear or anything with nature. That's not my intention, ever. I just want to be forthright that there can be either real explosions within the world or explosions of conflict within our landscape, which is why I deliver this information, not to make you feel powerless, but to remind you that it's so important to be taking care of yourself at this time. It's important to ground down onto what is steady and what is real and what is in front of you, to keep putting 1 foot in front of the other. Be mindful when you go down these fear or doom spirals. Remember to ground down into your body, ground down into nature. Notice where it is that you feel called to help build the future, where you feel called to innovate a certain area of your life, where you feel called to break down expectations of what other people have expected from you. This is the beauty of Uranus. It disrupts. It is a lightning bolt. It shocks away anything that is not true to you. This unpredictability isn't always pleasant. Change is not always pleasant, but it is needed. That's why I want to emphasize when it comes to North Node, karmic fated changes. There could be unexpected ups and downs during this time. I want you to anchor into the knowledge within your body, within your physical environment, knowing that change is needed. Change to our nervous system is always going to feel a little haywire. It's important to focus on what is in our locus of control, to take the actions that we can within this present moment and not let our fears spiral us into black and white doom of Scorpio energy. Not to say, if you're a Scorpio, that all Scorpios are like that. We're thinking of Scorpio energy as archetype, and particularly with it in the South Node. Like, it is so important that we focus on, this is what I can do and this is what I can do. Taurus as an archetype is the builder. Scorpio is the destroyer. So what I'm saying with North Node and Taurus, focus on how you can build the future rather than you can ruminate and obsess over the past and how it's all going to crap, essentially. Like with North Node Taurus, focus on what you can do now, both to innovate your immediate environment as well as the collective, if there's a way that you can do that. But there's so many things that you could doom scroll and that you can descend into fear about. I'm not lightening that at all. There is a lot going on, but it's important to focus on taking this particular step and this particular step, taking care of your body, taking care of your spirit, and taking care of your mind as you go. So without further ado, I'm going to be breaking it down house by house. I'll give a suggested rising sign, but it's important to note that the rising sign that I deliver may not be yours. I want you to go by where in your chart you have 18 degrees Taurus. So if you have 18 degrees Taurus within your first house, or if you use whole sign system and you are Taurus rising, this message is for you. Where it is that you are refusing to conform and breaking out of expectation lies in self, identity, who it is that you are. You may be behaving in unusual ways. You may be putting yourself first for the first time. I mean, it's interesting being a fixed sign right now because you have so much of the cosmos divvied up all around your chart, and it's almost like you could feel really scattered trying to be everything for everybody, and you're finally in a place where you're like, I'm going to prioritize myself. A lot of you could have gone through breakups fairly recently, and you're sort of just disrupting and finding out what it means to be your own person. Now, I do want you to be mindful that during this energy, you can be a little more impulsive than you typically are. You could find that you want to express yourself in new ways. That could be through your style, that could be through your hair, through your makeup. You no longer want to conform with what everybody else expects of you. You really want to break out of the mold and be your own self. Break out of what other people expect you to be. and be fully your own person. So just do know with this in your first house, you can feel more restless. You could be like, I need to make a change now. Like your body could physically be sort of like nervous or just always emotion. It can be hard for you to relax, which like as a Taurus rising, you're like, how am I not able to relax? But you're just feeling this rush of energy around, I've got to do something, or I've got to change something. And while you should note that as data, observe what in your life you feel called to innovate at this time, what no longer feels true to the person that you are, where it is that you want to break out of what other people expect of you in order to be your own person. Try not to do anything too impulsive, like sell all your belongings and run off with someone you just met or something of the nature. Note what comes to the surface, where you're feeling called to innovate your life, innovate how it is that you express yourself. You could even like to a digital level in terms of like your like avatars and your social media presence. You just have a desire to be seen as something else. It truly just feels like reinvention energy. And you know, sometimes you have to sort of go extreme with it before you find a happy medium. So like a lot of Taurus risings I'm observing within clients and stuff, like some of them are dyeing their hair pink and like doing things that are kind of impulsive. Again, noted as data. I wouldn't disrupt it all in one day. Like Uranus is the most stable influence, right? And it's like they need to do these more chaotic or erratic things, and then they sort of find what feels like them. Maybe they try the pink hair and they're like, that's not for me. But then they try on orange hair and that feels better fit. Maybe they sell their belongings and they move somewhere and they're like, ooh, this isn't quite the lifestyle for me. But then they move and they find that they're exactly where they're meant to be. I can't sit here and say don't change anything, because literally the cosmos are pushing you to change. I just want you to be mindful around what it is that you're changing and ensure it's authentic, ensure it feels true to you. And you can find during this time, you're coming off as more testy. I mean, a lot of you are having to exert boundaries around, no, I will not be that person for you. No, I'm not going to do that. That's not me. You're having to fight for your identity at this time. It could be coming across to other people as more aggressive and more agitated. Personally, I'm proud of you for holding boundaries and for advocating for the person that you are, but do know that people could perceive you at this time as someone who is more aggressive. So if you have 18 degrees Taurus within your second house, you could potentially be an Aries rising, but not necessarily. If you use whole sign, you will be Aries rising, but if you use Placidus, you may have a different rising sign. Nonetheless, if you have 18 degrees in Taurus in your second house, you are disrupting your value system as well as money. And some of you could be called to disrupt your finances in some way. You could be sort of waking up around money and being like, I don't want to be earning money for this, or like, there's got to be a different way. I don't want to spend my whole life doing this. Like, Uranus is very much a rebel energy, and it's in your second house. So you can be rebelling against, I don't want my entire life to be around making money. I need to follow what it is that makes me happy, or something of that nature. Some of you can be disrupting this energy constructively by inviting in a new income source, sort of disrupting your financial nature in order to invite in new money, new income, things of the nature, because your ruling planet is involved in this little conjunction. So you're really going to feel this energy build, and there's certainly a defiance. There is a rebellious energy. I mean, I find it's not what I would necessarily recommend, but I do think a lot of Aries risings could be considering a job change or occupation change during this time. Make sure it really feels centered in self and like you genuinely having different values and genuinely wanting to go in a new direction with your life. As I mentioned, Uranus is the most steady, stable influence, and it's important throughout the whole of this transit, you're supposed to be in a different place financially by the end of it, with North Node meeting up with Uranus in your second house. Like, you are encouraged to increase your income, yes, in ways that feel good to you, in ways that align with your values, and to be able to disrupt what no longer feels aligned in terms of how it is that you're spending money, how it is that you're earning money, maybe innovating to invite in a new income structure. But I want to widen it and really extend it also to values. That could also be where you're getting the shockwave of energy around really identifying what is that you value and building a life that really reflects that genuinely. Just be mindful, as there can be certain unpredictable events when it comes to your finances around this time. Just remember the energy of Taurus, slow and steady. Try not to make any rash or impulsive financial decisions. Note what comes to the surface, where you're craving change, where you're craving new income sources, what income sources no longer feel aligned, what values feel really good, what value systems no longer feel aligned for you. But try not to just destroy it all at once or burn it down all at once. You know, that's more so of a South Node Scorpio thing. Like with North Node Taurus, notice what you want to shake up, where you want to innovate, but before you destroy it all, really be really be focused around what is it that I want to build? How is me releasing this or innovating this moving me closer in the direction of my most authentic self, as well as the future and the world that I believe in? Editing me here, please forgive the interruption. I also just wanted to interject that for you, having this influence in the second house, this can absolutely be a pressure cooker if you have been very frustrated by your financial situation. Taurus very much is related to the labor force, so if you've found that your labor is not being valued appropriately, this can be sort of an explosive energy around wanting to advocate for your right to earn a living wage. A lot of people can be channeling this rebellious energy building up in this house if you feel undervalued. If you are not being paid for your true value, this is the activation point around really wanting to advocate to get the resources that you deserve. If you have 18 degrees Taurus within your third house, you may potentially be a Pisces rising, not always, but this message is for you. So love, pinky promise that you're gonna be super safe when it comes to your vehicle, okay? Like, I'm not saying don't go on short-term journeys or anything of the nature. You could just find people have more road rage. There can just be a little bit more aggression that you're experiencing on the road or in terms of short-term journeys. So just make sure that your vehicle is cool. Like, when I think of Mars Uranus, I think of like explosions, like things over bubbling over. I know nothing about cars, but I would just ensure you have enough water, you have enough oil, like everything's kind of working as it should, and that you're not putting unnecessary stress within your vehicle. To a larger extent though, you could find that you are experiencing more conflict when it comes to siblings, extended family members, neighbors. Any simmering tensions around neighbor disputes or people around you can reach a zenith at this point. Where you are leaning into disruption and innovation at this time though, is around how it is that you communicate. Know during this time, people can perceive you as someone who might be a little bit more forthright, a little bit more direct, and you might be speaking out in ways that doesn't make other people feel comfortable. And that is okay, because you are finding your voice. With Uranus, not everything that you're saying at this time may be the most popular thing. You can get some backlash on social media, or you can just find people are just like, what are you doing? Like, it's interesting when we disrupt a certain role that we play in other people's lives. It's like, oh, we're always the quiet one. Oh, we're always the one who lets everybody else have their share before we dig in. Like, oh, we're always in this. This feels like an energy where you're finding your voice and you're finding your advocacy for yourself, and you're behaving in unexpected ways that are disrupting the people around you, like your immediate contacts around you. You're also calling in these new subjects or new fields of study that can be a little bit out there or a little strange, and you're really leaning into that and embracing your own weird, embracing your own eccentricity. If you are in school, there can be disagreements, squabbles with classmates. Just think around you, you could just experience more conflicts within your immediate environment. If you have 18 degrees Taurus within your fourth house, you may potentially be an Aquarius rising, not always though. And this means that, Mars, Uranus, and North Node are all gathering in your fourth house. And it's challenging being a fixed sign right now because this exacts during Leo season. So you have most likely Saturn in your first, you have the Sun in your seventh, you have this energy in your fourth, then you have South Node in your 10th. So it's when you have so much energy, you could just feel pulled in a million different directions trying to keep everything in your life afloat. It's exhausting. And where you're disrupting is that you are generally putting your private life first. You can experience more squabbles when it comes to family members at this time. You can find that you're disrupting the role that you play for the family members. So I'm always the martyr, always help with this. You're disrupting and being like, no more. I'm not doing that any longer. For some, it can be like letting go of, constantly being at work, having a horrible work-life balance around disrupting. Nope. It's important for me to spend time with my family. It's important for me to spend more time at home. I would just be mindful when it comes to home repairs or things in the nature. Mars and Uranus, it's a very activating, explosive energy. So just being mindful when it comes to gas, oil, again, no fear. I'm not saying that's going to transpire for everyone. Just a time that I would exert a little bit more caution around that. But you can also just have certain flare-ups around the home, like AC goes out, or just a lot of maintenance issues that are causing you a lot of strife. You could just experience a lot of frustration. For some, you can be getting real that you are not happy in where you're living, and you're really calling in a place that does feel aligned, that does feel like you. You can have certain squabbles with a landlord, roommates, things of the nature. With Uranus in your fourth, you are encouraged to be able to invite in a more aligned, home environment, one that feels like you. So if you've been having all these squabbles, if you've been having all these issues with Mars, it's making us more testy, and you can, fight and fight and fight, whether it's your landlords or your roommates. I would really center in on this time, like, am I happy here? Does this make me feel like me? Am I able to like really ground down and build my life? And if the answer is no, I want you to invite in the winds of change during this time. Now, for some, due to leases or financial obligations, it may not be possible for you to up and leave, but I want you to strategically plot and build your pathway forward. Uranus and Mars aspects are coming in to activate this area of your life. So it could be really activating certain conflicts or certain unhappiness that's been bubbling beneath the surface. And maybe it's not possible for us to be able to change it right away, but I want you to exert the dedicated, steady energy of Taurus to be like, okay, I can't necessarily move right now, but I'm gonna plan and I'm gonna plot one step at a time. Think of Taurus the bull. One step at a time. We're gonna feel that South Node Scorpio asking us to like burn all down, just run away, just do our own thing, just forget it. But I want you to notice what's coming to the surface. I do not feel at home here. This place does not feel safe. This does not make me feel at ease. And being able to put in the pathway forward to be able to move or to change our environment for some way. And this is also our emotional state. So you can be feeling emotional in ways that you're not necessarily dialed into. You could be experiencing a lot of anger during this time that you're not necessarily used to. And finding constructive ways to sort of just deal with what's coming to the surface. This activation point. So again, it's bringing up all this suppressed stuff. And maybe it's not possible to totally forgive those people that you're angry about all at once, right? But notice what comes up and continue to feel it in order to heal it. And a lot of times, what it is that we're experiencing as anger has other emotions baked in. Like we might express our anger, but underneath that is frustration and resentment and all of these other nuances within what's coming to the surface. So I just want you to make peace with what comes to the surface, allow space for your emotions and for your anger, and realize that our anger can be fuel. So if you have 18 degrees Taurus within your 5th house, you may potentially be a Capricorn rising. Not always though. And with this energy, with North Node, Mars, and Uranus in your 5th house, you are choosing yourself and you're choosing fun in ways that are making other people uncomfortable. Your play and your fun and your desire to live in the moment can trigger other individuals. And it's sort of refreshing that this is happening for you, because with this happening in the 5th house, there can be certain elements of your art that is polarizing, or even just, as I mentioned, your play, like your just enjoyment to want to live in the moment, where other people are like, why aren't you miserable? Why aren't you, at our level, whether it's friend groups or things of nature? And it's like you are protecting your own joy. You are realizing, because everything feels so chaotic, you're like, I don't have time to not be happy, to find the gratitude and the pleasure and the play within my day-to-day. And that could trigger people. Like with South Node being in the 11th house, there could be certain friendships that no longer feel aligned. And there's really this zest for life that's activating within your chart with North Node, Mars, and Uranus in this house. Some people could be changing their mind when it comes to having children, things of the nature with this activation point. You could maybe, want to disrupt. Maybe that's what family expected you to do. And you're like, that's not aligned with what it is that I personally value. Like North Node Taurus speaks to our values. So it's like with Mars and Uranus, this can be upsetting or shocking to other people, but it's like you have to tune in and be like, what is it that I value for my world? As I mentioned, this could speak to creativity. So this could be an activation point around kind of funneling your anger, your frustration into art. You could be putting more energy into your art, kind of rebelling through your art. And I want you to make art for yourself. Make the art that you would want to consume. Like you're being asked to center into self-expression, expressing yourself in the ways that feel the most heart-centered, the most true to you. If you do have children, you could find that there are more disagreements or squabbles with them, or they could be going through a little bit of a rebellious phase at this time as well. And I just want you to be mindful around taking unnecessary risks. With Mars and Uranus, some people could be partying a lot more, or just like gambling a lot more. Like there's a really lovely, let's live for today, let's maximize today, which is beautiful, and I encourage that. But be mindful around how it is that you're coping during this time. Like, are you just looking for really quick thrills and things of the nature? It can make us a little bit more restless and really craving more stimulus, more stimulus, more stimulus, more fun, more fun, more fun. So definitely feel that restlessness, but strive to put it into other means, ways that feel heart-centered and self-expressive and good to you. And the house that it's landing in for you also speaks to romance and dating. So with this, you can just be like disrupting around what society wants from you, like with South Node 11th house around hopes and dreams and your peers. You could be like, okay, everybody's getting married, everybody's having babies, I just want to have fun, I want to flirt, and that's your right to. Like, Uranus asks us to release, where did these expectations and this conventional lifestyle come from, and is it right for me? Maybe for some not, maybe it's great for some. It's about Mars is sort of activating your own ability to choose and advocate for the world you want to live in and the play you want to exert and the way that you want to create. And that is your right. So if you have this energy building in your 6th house, you could potentially be a Sagittarius rising, not always though. And what I want to bring to the surface here is that you could be experiencing more squabbles, more disagreements when it comes to your coworkers, as well as if you happen to hire anybody with your employees. You can be experiencing a more tense workplace. There's a lot more pressure on you, and you can be more restless. Like, you can't be in the mood to just quit, just disrupt it, because there's been this simmering tension, this simmering boiling point within your workplace at this point. And maybe for some of you, you could have gotten stuck into this role around, well, this is what I do. This is all I do. This is what I have to do. But it's like with Uranus, it whispers change is possible. Maybe not immediately. Maybe we can't walk out of our job that we had prior and step into this new one, but it is possible for ourselves. Like, notice where it is that you're like, okay, this no longer feels resonant. I need to disrupt what it was. I need to disrupt this. I don't feel like I can be myself here. I'm experiencing so much conflict at the workplace. This might not be right for me. Notice what's coming to the surface and use the Taurus energy to plot if it's no longer an aligned workplace for you. Focus on putting one foot in front of the other and plotting perhaps a new change of scenery in your immediate environment. I do want to let you know that 6th house is health, and with Mars and Uranus, there can be certain flare-ups, particularly when it comes to like rashes, fevers, anything of that nature. Think Mars, think like inflammation, things of that nature. So important to pay attention to anything that comes to the surface health-wise. Again, it's activation point. So there can be unusual symptoms that are meant to sort of guide us in a new direction around taking care of our health. So let's say if you break out in hives one day, maybe note what it is that you ate and make that shift moving forward. Like, Mars Uranus makes things sometimes visible or brings them to the surface for us to be able to integrate. And for you, it's around health. 6th house also day-to-day, pets, things that you do every single day, errands, things of the nature. So if you have 18 degrees Taurus within your 7th house, you may potentially be a Scorpio rising, but not always though. And for you, where it is that you're conforming is in your relationships. If there are any partnerships where you are playing a role, it's like, well, I'm always the supportive girlfriend. I'm always the friend who's there. I'm the business partner who does all the admin stuff. And it's okay that they're never there for any of the hard stuff. That's not their role. Like, this is sort of energy where it really activates this area of our chart around what roles am I sick of? Like, this is no longer me. And I just want to say, with Mars in the 7th, we can experience way more flare-ups and arguments within our partnerships and relationships. We're no longer in the mood to conform. Like, a lot of the stuff that's coming to the surface is tensions and frustrations that have been building and building and building. This is explosive. So being mindful that you're not like lashing out at your one-to-one contacts, but do hold your ground. Like, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like your one-to-one contacts want you to be someone that you are not, hold that space. Uranus is encouraging you in innovating the connections and innovating those connections, but do know that you can come across as more feisty or more aggressive at this time. And I want you to be mindful around impulsively, leaving a partnership. For some, maybe that's the story, but I just want to let you know that Uranus isn't always the most steady influence. Note what comes to the surface where Uranus is like, we need to disrupt this connection. We need to innovate this connection. This no longer feels alignment. It'll sharpen around the eclipses. The story is still playing out. Uranus is bringing the surface where we need innovation and disruption within our one-to-one connections. And this story continues comes eclipses. For some, this could be a breakup now. Honor that. For some, the story could sharpen come eclipses. If you are single, you can find you are disrupting your normal type or releasing some of the old stories that you have around connection. So if you have 18 degrees Taurus within your 8th house, you may potentially be a Libra rising, but not always. And I want to let you know that there is this building slow burn energy that I've been talking around your shared assets. So if your partner has been spending a ton of money and you've been frustrated about that, that could reach a zenith point. If there's been any drama around inheritances or lawsuits or things of nature, this activation point, it's bringing that energy up to the surface. And you know, it could be more testy. This isn't the time I would try to figure out the will or the inheritances or any sort of shared money. It's a time that it could be met with way more conflict, way more issues, and it can be bringing a lot of those frustrations that have been simmering up to the surface. Now, for most of us, we're probably not in litigation. We're probably not in inheritance battles, but for those who have this in the 8th house who aren't, you're experiencing this disruption around how it is that you feel safe to trust others. And it's also this disruption around how it is and what it is that you view death as, which, you know, a lot of people can be very reckless and impulsive during this influence. And I just want you to be mindful of that. Like, some people can almost be descending in this nihilistic mind state around, well, nothing matters. I'm just going to be as impulsive as possible. And I would really resist that. Like I said, with Uranus, it could be very, very reckless. And with this in the 8th house, there just could be more of like a daredevil spirit, or wanting to get really accustomed to the darker sides of life, or what's taboo, what's not being talked about, what's under the surface. It's really getting comfortable with like this kind of nitty gritty, raw aspect of life, which for some could just send you into the space around nothing matters. I'm going to do whatever I want. Like, for some, you can funnel this into really wanting to dive deeper into hidden wisdom. What's beneath the surface? What matters to me? What's my legacy going to be? So try to shift that energy more that way, rather than being like, nothing matters, so I'm going to risk it all anyway. Like, that's not what I would recommend. And when it comes to those who are married, there can be certain simmering financial discussions that this might bring to the surface. And again, it could come out in a lash out sort of way, but strive to just innovate what's no longer working and use this Mars energy to advocate your point of view without trampling over the other person. If you have 18 degrees Taurus within your 9th house, you may potentially be a Virgo rising, not always though, but this message is for you. So with North Node, Uranus, and Mars meeting up in your 9th house, there is this disruptive energy that's been building within you around your spiritual beliefs, around your big picture. You can be sort of frustrated around this area of life. Maybe you were part of certain religion. There's parts of you that are like, that isn't feeling aligned with me anymore. Like, it doesn't feel like me. For some of you, if you're in the spiritual community or like into astrology, there can be certain elements of astrology that you're like, this doesn't feel good to me or aligned for me. Like, there can be certain changes, and maybe they're not all so dramatic, like leaving on a religion or no longer being in astrology. Maybe if you're into astrology, it's like shifting to whole sign or Placidus or something of the nature. Maybe if you're into astrology, it's realizing, you know, I used to think I was really into birth chart astrology. Now I'm more into mundane astrology, so on and so forth. There's this disruption, and disruption furthermore to move us in a direction that feels more true to ourselves. For some, you can be rethinking or replanning your academic goals. You can be like, this is what everyone expected me to do. They wanted me to get a PhD and go in this direction, but it just doesn't feel like me any longer, and that's okay. I will say there can be more of a testy vibe when it comes to religious communities, spiritual communities, academic communities, so just being mindful with that, but continue to move in the directions that feel good for you, and note where you're feeling this call to innovate or to advocate for your belief systems. If you have 18 degrees Taurus within your 10th house, you may potentially be a Leo rising, not always though, and you are really calling in shifts within your career, okay? And with Mars in the 10th, you know, you can have certain flare-ups and arguments with your bosses, with your authority figures. I mean, for some, this can be a very motivating influence where you're working harder than you ever had. Now, I do want to let you know, with this energy building within your 10th house, there can be certain flare-ups, disagreements with authority figures, with bosses, at work. You could be seen as someone who really needs to be Mars-like at work. You could be having to be more aggressive, advocate for yourself more. And I encourage you to do that. Like with Uranus, if you're typically the one where you don't fight for your ideas, you're like, okay, Linda can take credit for that one. Like, this is the energy where you're like, no, Linda, that was my idea. Like, my name needs to be on the proposal deck. Like, you can be advocating for yourself in new ways within your career. For some who have this, your career may not be feeling aligned any longer. You could be like, I need to disrupt this. This isn't me. I'm feeling drained. I'm exhausted. I'm experiencing all of this conflict. This is making me be someone that I don't want to be. I need to get out of this. I need to disrupt this. I need to move in a different direction. And I really encourage, try not to be impulsive at this time. Notice where it is that you're feeling this call for change or for innovation. That's what Uranus is there for. But with Mars, we could just be like, I quit. And it's like, North Nodes and Taurus, plot our pathway forward one step at a time. And it's like your chart is being lit up like the 4th of July right now with all of these placements all over, basically in your angular houses. It's pulling you in all of these different directions. And you can be so scattered and so burnt out that you might not be in the best mind state to be able to make huge decisions around your career, around your reputation. So just really recommend gain more clarity. Notice what you want to innovate, plan the pathway forward, but see how the story continues to evolve as you plot what would feel best moving forward. For those who have their own business or anything of that nature, you can be a bit disruptive. Like maybe it's industry standard to do things like this and you're like, F that, I want to do this. It's really being able to infuse your own you-ness within your career and maybe show out in more forward, direct, bold ways. If you have 18 degrees Taurus within your 11th house, this is the area of your chart that governs friendships and hopes and dreams for the future. You may potentially be a Cancer rising, but not always. So check where you have 18 degrees Taurus within your chart. So 11th house, it's disrupting your friendships, okay? Like it's so interesting for those who have this because a lot of your chart is asking you to get out of your shell, to put yourself out there, and particularly to new and different people that maybe you wouldn't have socialized with prior. Like with this, yes, you can have more flare-ups and tension with your friends, with your colleagues, with anyone in your network, but you can also be calling in, hanging around different sort of people who are inspirational within their own way. When it comes to hopes and dreams, you can find like, I really want to be a dentist, but I'm ready to disrupt what it was that I was building, to build in a new direction, a more heart-centered direction. And with 11th house being humanitarian goals, you could be finding, because this is going to be a big deal collectively. Like you can find with this in your 11th house, you could be more inclined to protest. You want to advocate for the future you believe in rather than waiting passively. Mars is all about taking active action forward. And for you, it's around building the world that you value. And with the energy being Uranus, changing the ways that feel aligned and focusing on what it is that you can do to contribute to the future you want to build. Now, if you have 18 degrees Taurus within your 12th house, you may potentially be a Gemini rising, not always though. And for you, this is happening in a very private portion of your chart. You could be having a lot of really strange spiritual experiences at this time. There's a lot of energy happening beneath the surface. You could be sharpening new intuitive abilities that come on randomly, new prophetic dreams. You're not used to that. There can be certain energy around healing angers of the past via your dreams. Your dream world could be very active. You can find that where you are sort of innovating, what's expected from you is spending more time alone. Maybe you have to have more boundaries around coworkers or always doing favors for other people in order to carve out heart-centered space to be able to rejuvenate within your own way, connect spiritually in your own way, attune to your inner landscape. And that could trigger people around you, but making the decisions and setting the boundaries for your internal landscape that feel good, as well as if there's been any escapist tendencies. 12th house is what it is that is hidden, what we don't deal with, right? The skeletons in our closet. So for some, this could activate like, okay, I really have a problem here. Like I've been using gambling to avoid my emotions. I've been using substances to avoid, like there's a rush of energy around your inner landscape and maybe making the decisions that innovate that sector of your life. Maybe for some, you choose to use the active energy of Mars to pursue therapy or to be able to really deal with what it is that you've been running from. This activation point is building there. So it's like when it comes to these hidden portions of the chart, it's like they're not so hidden. It's almost like they're peeking out. Like it could have been running from this, and now whether it's your dreams, meditations, solitude, it's just becoming more and more apparent. Those monsters under your bed that you're trying to run from are getting noisier and noisier. And so this energy is asking you to face it proactively and plan your pathway forward. So loves, I hope you enjoyed the video. I tried to deliver this information with as little fear as possible, and I will never be dishonest in these videos. I will always be forthright with you around what astrological energies are challenging, and I won't lie, this is a challenging one, but it doesn't mean that the world is over. It doesn't mean that we should just hide under our beds and give up. notice where you're feeling this call for action. Thank you, Mars. This call for innovation, Uranus, and how this is basically springboarding you closer to your personal destiny, your personal karma. Thank you, North Node. And be willing to innovate what no longer feels aligned. Be willing to take action in ways that people might not have expected you to act. Be willing to defy convention. I saw this quote from Marianne Williamson the other day, and I just want to read it to you because I feel like it's such a beautiful illustration of this Mars Uranus North Node energy. And the quote is, "I think if you're going to try to live a creative life as a writer or as a human being, one of the things you have to give up is being in the popularity contest. Running against the grain, running counter to the ways of the world is the purpose of our lives. We're here to repair the world, not to help the way it has been." I thought that was just so perfect for this energy. It's really asking us to disrupt what no longer feels aligned, be able to defy convention, and to really be able to build the future that we believe in and that we value. So I hope this message resonated for where you've been feeling this sort of slow burn energy within the Taurus sector of your chart. It's intense times, loves. Please take care of yourself. My Instagram handle is @HaleyCometAstrology. My TikTok is the same. I would love to connect with you over there. And until we meet again, drink lots of water and stay cosmic.